Welcome to the January 6, 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design Meeting. In just a minute, I'll hand over the mic to our chairperson, Joel Adrian, but we'll start and kick this thing off. This is the virtual meeting protocol. Staff will control the slides displayed throughout the meeting. Applicants, staff, board members, and members of the public should give their name first whenever speaking. Applicants and members of the public must be sworn in before speaking for the first time. Only attendees who have registered to speak before the deadline at noon today may speak during the meeting. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Board members who need to recuse themselves from voting will be temporarily removed from the meeting and readmitted prior to addressing the next item. And we do have a case where that will occur today. We have one individual board member that will be absent for the first three items. If the board member needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Chat has been disabled for everyone. And of course, this meeting is public and it is being recorded. Go ahead, Mr. Joel Adrian.
All right, somehow I lost everybody here. All right, well, this is the January 6th, 2020 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Amanda Barton, Paula Murphy, Jeff Webb, Andrew Hargett, Kelvin Uge, Ruthie Ravenel, myself, Joel Adrian. Present from the planning staff are Eric Schultz and Lee Batchelder. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear first from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. 1, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. 2, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And 3, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54.924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. The character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance.
Very good. Thank you, Joel. Order on each application. The chair announces each application followed by staff presentation and recommendation. Staff will call on applicant to present their application after being sworn in by the chair. Staff will open the public comment period to receive comments from registered attendees in favor, first spoken, then written. Each speaker will be sworn in by the chair. Staff will then recognize registered attendees for public comments in opposition after the speaker is sworn in, first spoken, then written. Staff will recognize the applicant for a short rebuttal, and then the chair will then close the public comment period and begin board discussion. Providing comment, if you submitted a request to speak on an item before the deadline, staff will call on your name when it is your turn to speak and enable your microphone. Your microphone will be disabled after you're done speaking. You may only speak once for each item, and you must state your name and address for the record, or you will not be permitted to provide comment. Board discussion. Following public comment period, board members will make comments, ask questions, and make motions. After a motion and a second, board members will vote aye in favor or nay not in favor. If the vote is not unanimous, the chair will poll each member for their vote. The chairman shall announce the vote on the motion and the final decision on the application. Again, if a board member needs to recuse himself or herself, he will or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back into the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Mr. Adrian.
All right, so our first item on the agenda, well, actually, before we do that, we will state that Mr. Jeff Webb will be recusing himself from A1, A2, and A3.
That is correct.
So the first item is A1. It is 98 Wentworth Street, application number 2101-06-A1, the TMS number 457-0401-029. Requested variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree zoned LB and DR1F. Back to you, Mr. Schultz.
Very good. Thank you. As you may recall, you heard this application in December and you made a motion and you deliberated and made a decision on a couple sections or portions of the application. One area you decided to defer, and then of course we didn't have a quorum last month, so we had to delay a month, but we're very lucky that everybody's here tonight. So we'll be addressing just the portion to remove one grand tree. This was the original application. The site is located on Wentworth, bound by Glebe Street to the east. It is zoned LB and DR1F. This is a Google aerial. It is the home of Grace Cathedral Church. You can see Wentworth to the south, Glebe to the east, and the College of Charleston properties to the north and west. Again, this is the original document submitted. You're really concentrating on the blue tree, which is a grand live oak tonight. This was an exhibit that I built for that other meeting, again, showing the 27-inch live oak, the trunk, and how the crown stretches into the existing parking lot, having an asymmetrical crown with a lean. This is a shot of some protected trees that were already addressed, and the small buffer area that was already previously addressed. New exhibits. You asked that the applicant come back and try to better explain what they felt was their hardship. This is a new exhibit showing the 4 points of the hardship and how they feel they meet the hardship. And it is much better, and you know, staff agrees with what is said there. This is a email that I received from the Director of Architecture and Engineering at the College of Charleston, obviously in support of the removal, not objecting to the removal. So what they did, they went out and measured the crown of the tree. So instead of having just our required protection zone required for that diameter tree, now you see how far the crown stretches into the property, obviously leaning to the south, and of course the overlay of their proposed new building. This exhibit speaks to the red line is a tunnel, which the College of Charleston Central Plant has under the ground. So kind of demonstrates that they can't move west with the building at all. It also demonstrates sight lines to the 1855 piece of architecture that they're trying to, you know, keep required setbacks off of. And the applicant will do a better job explaining this, obviously, but and of course, they can't bring the building forward to Wentworth Street because that would not be in line with the front of the cathedral. An exhibit of what they're trying to do here with architecture. And then a conceptual landscape plan. So with that said, staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 27 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site. Must provide a mitigation summary and a landscape plan for review and approval. Mitigation may be in the form of a contribution to the city street tree program if they can't fit it all on site. And then I thought, as I mentioned last time, must put forth a good faith effort to have the large wood from the tree utilized in a repurposed manner, whether they donate it to the College of Charleston to be used in some manner, or the church actually uses some of the wood for some type of feature within the new construction. So with that said, we need to identify the 98 Wentworth team, and we'll have to identify Mr. Brian Hellman, Simmons Young, Chris Cook, Cindy Klein, and then I have a couple people that have registered to speak in favor of the project.
All right, let me know when everybody's online so we can swear them in.
And Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Is all your members of your team unmuted and ready to be sworn in?
Yes, I am, as Simmons Young.
Brian Hellman here, I am as well.
Is Cindy with you tonight?
She had issues with her Zoom yesterday. She may be seeing the same things today.
Okay. Cindy is there, I see her, but she just needs to unmute herself. Bryant Stowe need to be unmuted?
No, Eric.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if Cindy, can you hear us? Well, go ahead, Brian or Chris,
Well,
you're on the floor.
Hang on, I'll do the swearing
yes.
in. Everybody just say, I do. That'd be great. So
Yes.
you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
I do.
All right,
I do.
excellent. Okay, so if everybody is sworn in, then yes, either Simmons or someone from that team can go ahead and start with the presentation.
Sure. This is Simmons Young. Sorry, I don't have my video on for some reason. Is there a way to do that on my end?
I can go back to the exhibits. Which one would you want, Simmons?
Promoting him to be a panelist, Eric, so he can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Simmons, you're muted.
Okay. Video and audio. Could we start with the last slide, please? Good afternoon. I'm Simmons Young, 133 Bufane Street in Charleston Village, Charleston, South Carolina, 29401. And I'm sorry, I meant actually the last slide in the presentation, which is, I believe, the site plan, the landscape site plan. Thank you. So I'll introduce the project, then hand it off to Brian Hellman. On the site plan, you can see the cathedral is in the middle of the plan. The old Parish Hall is on the right-hand side on Glebe Street on the east. And there's a garden between those two buildings. And then the proposed additions on the left with the courtyard between it. The existing Parish Hall was built in the 50s when the congregation membership was over 1,000. The congregation membership is now 3,250, and it's been increasing. Church also recently became the cathedral for the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina. And the building houses Grace Little School that provides childcare for 2s, 3s, pre-Ks, and kindergartners. There's a significant outreach program based out of the commercial kitchen, and the church is basically bursting at the seams, so much so that the administration, the clergy offices are located in another building down the street. To serve these needs, we proposed this addition. The first floor has a cathedral hall, an updated kitchen, ADA bathrooms, accessible entrances, elevators, and the little school gets consolidated into the old building and the old kitchen in particular. It's come closer together. The playground goes on the north. So that's all in one area, which is a safer way to proceed with a school like that. On the second floor, the addition, which we're proposing on the left-hand side here, there are offices for the clergy and administration staff. Now, if we could jump to that slide with the red and green, which is there we go. So what you can see there is the tree that's mapped over the back of the addition in gray, and then a bold red line running to Glenn McConnell dorm, and some green that I'll talk about here, setback areas. Red area has a utility tunnel running through it, and I understand it goes from Glenn McConnell dorm to the central power plant of the college. So the building can't go further west on the lot. The green next to the cathedral shows a separation that's done for two reasons. One is to provide a distance from the cathedral so it's not structurally compromised by this new building, and the other is to allow distance to the historic Category 1 building. We've been working with city staff and BAR appointed members on that. It's also been important that the front face of the building not go past the front plane of this part of the church building. Mr. Schultz recognized the sight line drawn here that was very important as we have been through other review processes. The Secretary of Interior standards for preservation point to this type of siting for an addition. In looking at this site plan, you can see that the hall and the ADA bathrooms, the kitchen, the emergency egress, the elevator, and the ADA accessible entrance are at the back of this building, and that's the area overlapped by the tree canopy. If we could switch to the elevation, please. If we look at the elevation, we can see that the eave line of the church has been the item that controls the height of this building. And working with the city and the BAR members, again, following those federal, state, and local preservation guidelines, we've kept this building at 2 stories instead of the 3 that it's zoned for. These limitations have gotten us to site the building as it is. With that, I'll hand it over to Brian to continue.
Thank you, Simmons. Is there a way that I can be increased to a panelist or whatever the terminology is? So
I'm not sure what you're asking, Brian.
that was what I was asking. So you can see. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
It just works better for me, I think, when we can all see each other.
Yes.
That's
Gotcha.
okay. Thank you. Chairperson Adrian and members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, I am Brian Hellman with Hellman, Yates, and Tisdale, 105 Broad Street. And I'd like to begin by thanking Mr. Schultz for his stellar overview of the application and the procedural history that brought us here tonight. And Simmons, thank you for your overview. As Simmons stated, I'll walk the board through the 4-part variance test and why we believe this application meets it, ultimately asking for your support and approval for this timely and important addition to the church. Simmons and the team have worked extensively with staff, with our neighbors, the College of Charleston, Harleston Village Neighborhood Association, and others to garner support for this project. And we want to thank everybody for their time and effort as well. Did I hear you correctly, Eric, that there was nobody registered tonight that was opposed to this project?
That is correct. Nobody registered to oppose.
Thank you. So in South Carolina, to obtain a variance, an applicant must meet a 4-part test. We believe we meet this 4-part test for the following reasons. First of all, as Simmons alluded to in his presentation, as did Mr. Schultz, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions that pertain to this piece of property. They're the obvious ones, the lot size and shape, and how they're impacted by existing improvements. First of all, it's an oddly shaped lot, small and compact when one considers the membership of the church congregation, with only 600 seats, over 3,000 members, a preschool, and active ministry and outreach programs. To support these uses, as Simmons also pointed out, the clergy offices and administration are located off-site in a separate building down Wentworth Street. A major goal of this project is to bring them all into one campus. That's made difficult by these extraordinary exceptional conditions, which are a function of the existing improvements. The Category 1 cathedral, rated the highest category in the city's historic evaluation system. Because of the nature of the historic building, as the area in green where the sight line is shown is not only a gap for visibility, but it creates structural related issues, and that the micropiles that are going to be necessary for the new addition must remain a certain distance away from from the historic cathedral. So it was constructed in 1848, and the 1855 plat shows the original church line on what was then 3 parcels. Over the years, the additions have been made to the west. Because of these existing improvements, the zoning ordinance imposes and the existing conditions create extraordinary exceptional conditions with respect to the siting of any addition. While, for instance, our zoning allows for almost 100% lot occupancy and a height of 3 stories, the proposed improvements may not occupy anywhere near that percentage on the site and are limited to 2 stories for the reasons that I had previously set forth. The historic nature of the cathedral, the sight lines that Simmons and Mr. Schultz pointed out, as well as this, as well as the height of the cathedral. So under the city's ordinances that applies related to historic properties, the building must be shorter and smaller than the underlying zoning ordinance would allow. Additionally, this utility tunnel, what's in red here, owned by the College of Charleston, crosses through the western part of the site and makes building in that area impossible. So we're unable to build a wider building to avoid building the ADA and accessible areas in the back where the tree is because of this utility tunnel. The shape of the tree itself is also a challenge. It is grown mainly in one direction to the south, where it greatly impacts the buildable area of the site. According to my understanding, Mr. Schultz, this tree is at a C or a B- condition, and the roots continue to make the parking lot uneven. It regularly needs to be patched. The roots need to be shaved. It's actually presently creating a somewhat difficult situation for the folks that are elderly and use that area as a sort of an accessible way to get to the church as it is. It would make the area inappropriate for necessary emergency egress as people cross over it today or with the addition. So for those reasons, we think that we have some extraordinary and exceptional conditions specific to this property that do not, part B of the test, generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. Specifically, the odd shape of the lot, the category rated historic building, utility tunnel, and the need for safe and efficient emergency egress. And for the reasons that we had stated already, part C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance in a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property due to the lot size, the shape, the restrictions, the 19th century improvements, the other conditions. This single tree, which interestingly enough, the church having been there since the middle of the 19th century, we have this single tree that's probably maybe 30 or 40 years old that we're all here to talk about. It's merely a fraction of the age of the church, but this single tree is unreasonably restricting utilization of the property. And the last part of the test, that it will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by granting of the variance. We think that the approval of this variance would not be of any detriment to the sole adjacent property owner, the College of Charleston, who approves of this application. Furthermore, it's a substantial benefit to the public good by providing a safe area for families, young children to congregate, as well as the outreach programs that it would enhance. The character of the district would not be harmed, but would be enhanced by supporting and enabling a religious use on the peninsula to grow and prosper. This is at a time when many churches in the peninsula are closing their doors and moving off the peninsula, and their properties are being repurposed for other uses, restaurants, residences, and the like. Additionally, Wardemer and Klein have prepared a landscaping plan that will place a significant oak tree along the proposed playground that will have room to grow, prosper, and be a significant benefit to the church and the public at large. Thank you. I know that was an earful, but we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Brian and Simmons. Is there anybody else that would like to add to the application, or Eric, do we want to unmute those that are present to speak in favor?
I don't hear anything from their team, so we'll go to those that have registered to speak in favor. Number one would be Susan Carter.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Carter. I live at 1155 Fort Lamar Road, Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm the senior warden at Grace Church Cathedral. Thank you all very much for considering.
Ms. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Carter, this is Chairman Adrian. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I need to swear you in before you speak. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much. Please proceed.
My apologies. Thank you for considering our request for the variance. The building that Simmons and Lauren Sanchez have designed for us will certainly serve Grace Church Cathedral, but it will also be, we hope, a very, very important building to the community, to the college, to the village, to the neighbors. We have a very vibrant outreach, and we're excited to continue to grow that. We also look forward to planting a beautiful tree over the east side of the playground that will be much more visible to the AME Church from Glebe Street and from the back of the church. I had never heard of repurposing the wood from the tree, and I think that sort of gave me goosebumps. I love that idea. So thank you all very much. We appreciate your consideration.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Our second individual to speak in favor is, excuse me if I get this wrong, but Thu Lesher.
Hi, it's two Lesher.
Two. Sorry
Excellent.
about that.
That's
Well,
all right.
Miss Lesher, let me swear you in, and then you can state your full name and address and proceed. But do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much.
My name is Tu Lesher. I live at 67 Rutledge Avenue, just down the street from the church in Charleston. I've lived in Charleston Village for now almost 15 years, and at the same time, a member of Grace Church. My children went to school there. I've served on the vestry, sung in the choir. And we have, as Susan has said, seen the church grow almost double in size, especially with the number of children and families with children that have been coming to the church. We love this church and it's beautiful. And I think Simmons and Lauren have designed a beautiful addition that will look very historic to the church. And I think what we will gain in architecture not only for the church, but for the neighborhood as well, will surely offset the losing of one tree.
All right, thank you. Mr. Schultz, is there anybody else registered in favor?
Nobody registered in favor or in opposition.
All right, then what I will do is I'll be closing this application to the public, and we will open it up to the board for questions or discussion. And I'll start, and I'll say, I want to say thank you for the revised application and presentation. I think our largest hangup on this tree at the November meeting was justifying the hardship. And I believe that what we've seen today with the clear representation of the utility easement, the requirement for the separation from the existing structure, and all, in my eyes, it definitely demonstrates and shows that hardship present. But I'll open it up to the rest of the board if there's any questions that they have for the applicants.
Amanda, you got to unmute yourself. Amanda, unmute.
This is Amanda Barton, and I agree with what Joel said. I think you've proved the hardship, and additionally, the fact that the adjacent neighbors aren't opposed to it, and there are no, there have been no objections from the general public. I'm good with it. I think my question is what does a mature tree mean? What size? What are we talking about in the area between the parking lot and the playground?
We can unmute Cindy Klein for that, please. Cindy? She must be having technical difficulty. Simmons, do you have an idea of?
If it's okay, well, I want to say from my recollection in conversations, 4-inch was the number, but I'm not certain. I can call Cindy relatively easily and put her on speakerphone if everyone is amenable to that.
That's fine. I just wouldn't call it
no.
a mature tree because it's not.
And she texted and says 6 inches.
Okay.
6 inches is the answer.
I think if you go too much larger than that, often it's just hard to have them established well. So, okay.
That work, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
And she agrees.
So Andrew, or
I concur with Joel and Amanda. I really appreciate you coming back with this additional information because I think the first time we heard this, it was, well, we just want to remove this BC live oak, and the hardship wasn't there and the support wasn't. We didn't have any support from the neighbors, but we have both of those now, so I'm comfortable with it as well. And I'd make a motion for approval with staff recommendations and conditions.
all right, well, let's hold that motion and see if anybody has anything else to add to the discussion. If not, then we'll look for a second.
I agree with Paula. The only thing I would say is, it's a live oak. So number 3 is, I dig it, Eric. I like the adventure spirit there, but the fact that it's live oak wood that's a tough wood to use, in my opinion. But other than that, I'm fine with everything.
It could be a sculpture or something, rather than, building material, right? It could be something.
Yeah, Andrew, I agree. It's very tough wood, but even the simple thing of cutting chunks and using them as stools in the playground for the children to sit on in semicircle for reading or whatever, they'll eventually rot, but they can be used.
Sure.
Yep. All right. Well, Paula has a motion for approval with staff conditions. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, so we'll say seconded by Andrew. And now I'll just go through the roll. And if everybody would unmute that's on the committee, when you hear your name called, say either aye in favor or nay not in favor. Ms. Barton,
I in favor.
Ms. Murphy,
I in favor.
and Mr. Hargett.
I in favor.
Mr. Eugene,
I in favor.
and Ms. Ravenel.
I in favor.
And Chairman Adrian is also aye in favor, so it is unanimous approval, 6 to 6-0. We thank you for your time and application today.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, so our next item on the agenda will be item A2, and that is 370 UG Street. The application number is 2101-06A2. The TMS number 460-0302-099. Requested variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 2 protected trees zoned DR2F.
Okay, this is the original application. Again, this was deferred due to a lack of a quorum. We're kind of moving up north on the peninsula to another historic structure. This justifies how they feel they meet the hardship test, and I'll explain it in a minute. 370 Hugie Street is bound by Hugie and also Shan Street. It's Firehouse number 8. Firehouse number 8 is a very important building to the city. It houses one apparatus, but it needs to be renovated for seismic reasons. It's closed right now. I'm not sure where they moved the crew to, but after renovation, obviously they'll come back to this facility. It's centrally located on the peninsula. This is an aerial shot. So basically you have staff parking on the west side, and behind the building, there's a gap in the wall on the west side of the property. The apparatus, I'm not sure if this is a drive-through or not. The applicant will have to tell you that. I'm not sure. But obviously when the door goes up and when they receive a call, they exit on the Hugie. There is a sidewalk on the east side for that small dead-end street that leads into the school. And over the years, 2 volunteer trees grew on the east side, one being a oak, one being a hackberry. And in order to stabilize and do the seismic work for the foundation, they have to excavate on the east side. And as you can see, they would get into many, many tree roots, jeopardizing the stability of the tree. And again, the photos show that these trees are comfortable with one another, but they are of different species. So obviously volunteer trees, in my opinion. And you can see the view looking south, the area that they have to work in order to stabilize that historic structure. One being an 18-inch hackberry, the other being a 15-inch laurel oak. Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 10 caliber inches. These are protected trees, so it's 5 inches per protected tree to be planted on site. And with the improvements, they are improving. I apologize, I forgot to add that exhibit. Oh my goodness, but they are formalizing the parking lot on the west side instead of just having gravel. They're adding, the necessary generators and emergency equipment to keep the station up during an event. But there you have it. So with that said, we need to unmute Edmund Most with the city, Gary Jensen with ADC Engineering, Brian Stowe, and Chris Cook, and Matthew Compton with the city. Not sure who's going to take the lead. I'll pick on Chris Cook. Chris, can you hear us?
I can. Did we all need to be sworn in at one
Yes.
time?
Yep.
Yes, so if everybody is
Is that
unmuted.
the entire team, Chris? I'm sorry, did I leave anybody out?
No, that's everybody.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm gonna swear y'all in. If you would just one at a time say your answer, but do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
All right, anybody else? There's only 2 I do's.
I do.
Okay, if everybody has been sworn in, then I guess Mr. Cook, if you would, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And I think what I will do is, realizing that we have Edmund and Matt on, I might give each of them, Edmund first, maybe. If Edmund, was there anything that you wanted to say before I give a very brief additional description of what Eric has already provided?
Was there somebody I missed? Was there an Edmund that was supposed to be unmuted as well?
Edmund Most, yes.
Okay, that's the one I missed. All right, sorry.
Okay, I wasn't aware that I was going to be unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And
Okay,
Edmund, it's
great.
fine if you would like, we can just go ahead and proceed on if you did not.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I did want to say a couple of words. I mean, this is an emergency facility, and I think Eric Schultz summed it up really well. This is an emergency facility. It's housed 24 hours a day, and like much of our infrastructure in downtown, it's not designed for the seismic potential seismic events that we could have in hurricane. When there's evacuations, these facilities stay housed, and the apparatus is in there. If we were to have a significant seismic event, we would lose the crews and the apparatus in those bays potentially. So these upgrades, all funded or primarily funded from grants, are very imperative. And the foundation work is a key component that Eric alluded to in that one of that exhibits right there, to get that foundation system structurally sound. So it's very unfortunate for these trees. But I will say this, the Shan Street sidewalk is actually actively used for students that are coming and going to that entrance right there of the school. But I just, we're in support of this. We have a good, strong landscape plan, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this presentation. Thank you, Eric.
Edmund, thank you. If you could just state your address for the record.
Sure. As a city employee or as a resident?
City employee. Oh, city employee.
City employee, Parks Department, 823 Meeting Street. I'm the Deputy Director of Parks Department.
Excellent, thank you. All right, who else would like to present?
I think, Joel, if I could. So this is Chris Cook, address 1226 Yeamans Hall Road, Hanahan, South Carolina. Real quick, I think Eric has presented it very well, and Edmund's additional comments. I think the key point is that the seismic upgrade that needs to be done for this facility, as shown in that photograph that shows that distance outside, that is with the structural engineering, we've worked very hard to minimize that area that we have to have. And that's as little of a space that they can go in, put micropiles in to then get underneath this building and support it so that it will be able to withstand a seismic event. The other item is just to the left of those trees in that photograph, the sidewalk is right up adjacent to that tree as well. So the sidewalk has actually been adjusted to be poured around those trees. So there really is no room if we were to proceed with this project without removing those trees. The damage to the trees would be significant, and not to mention, I think it would be a real difficult to excavate as far down. That excavation has to go down approximately 4.5 feet to get the footing underneath that wall. So it is a requirement to be able to do that, to seismically upgrade that building. And I think I'll limit my additional words to that for now and be available to answer any questions or provide any additional clarification that y'all need.
Thank you. Eric, is there anybody registered to speak in favor or against the application?
Mr. Chair, nobody registered to speak in favor or oppose the application.
Okay, then I think that we'll close this application to the public. We'll open this up to the board for any discussion or questions they may have. I would say as chairman, I think that it's been presented well. I do believe that it's justified to remove the 2 trees. because the sidewalk on the one side and losing the majority of the root structure on the other, I can't imagine them not being hazardous if they were still there after the foundation repair work. But,
Well, I mean, they're not going to be able to, once you cut into those buttress roots, I mean, those trees are going to be a hazard. I would even make them, I mean, I'm fine with the motion, but technically once they have to fix that, those trees are hazard trees.
Right.
Technically hazard trees don't even require mitigation. So, you know, the fact that they're going to mitigate them, great.
I agree. Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a motion that we move to approve with board recommendations. Staff recommendations, sorry.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor for approval with staff conditions by Ms. Barton, seconded by Mr. Hargit. I will go through the roll. Ms. Barton?
Aye, in favor?
Ms. Murphy?
Aye, in favor.
Hargit?
Aye, in favor.
And Mr. Yuji?
Aye, in favor.
And Ms. Ravenel?
Aye, in favor.
And Mr. Adrian is also aye in favor, so this also is approved, the 6-0 vote. Thank you again for your time and application. Which will bring us to agenda item A3, which is 171 Moultrie Street, application number 2101-06-A3, TMS number 460-000004. Request a variance from section 54.327 to omit the 15 protected trees per acre requirement, zone DR1F.
Okay, 170 Moultrie. As you see on the application, it's 2 Lee Street. The Citadel has many addresses, but I know it as 171 Moultrie. It's used commonly, often, but here's the application. Again, this was deferred due to the lack of a quorum. Justification here for meeting the hardship test. Large Citadel campus, but we're going to focus in on the intersection of where Moultrie and where it then begins as Lee Avenue. So number 7 actually on this exhibit, or number 1, I guess, Lee Avenue. This is Capers Hall. Capers Hall is an older structure, obviously one of the first buildings probably built on the Citadel campus, and it's beyond its functionality use, I would best say. ADA issues, classroom size, numerous issues. So they have obtained BAR approval to demolish that building and build back a new Capers. This is the existing site plan. As you see, it's an L-shaped building with surface parking to the west and east or south of the structure, bound by Elmwood Ave and Hugie and Haygood. So the purple tree, the way I advertise this for the new members of the board, we have not been able to get a true survey of all trees 8 inches in diameter on the entire Citadel campus. It's obviously one large lot. They are to maintain 15 trees per acre of trees 8 inches in diameter or greater. So I advertised it as omitting the 15 trees per acre. The purple tree is an existing southern magnolia between the chain link fence and the building. And then you have 2 8-inch or greater diameter holly trees on the south side. And then the palm trees are the blue trees. And I always suggest during the TRC process, that's our technical review committee process, in which all new construction has to go through in order to get a building permit. They're palm trees, so we list those as to be transplanted. And if they don't make the transplant, then they just buy new palm trees and incorporate them into the landscape. But so really we're dealing with the southern magnolia and the hollies. This is the new Capers Hall. Obviously, the programming for the building is much different. Many more classrooms, corridors, a theater type, amphitheater type classroom, if not used for performances. Making a real presence on the Hugie Street south side with a plaza, a gated entrance. They do need vehicle access to the east side, to the back of house, if you will, to that stage or that amphitheater component of the building. So there's a little, access for delivery trucks and that sort of thing there. Proposed landscape plan, obviously palm trees, really enhancing the edge along Hugie and Elmwood with new street trees, new masonry wall and fences and that sort of thing, and as well as canopy trees. This is the southern Magnolia, as you see it. It's behind the bus station, between the chain link fence and the building. I think even to bring this building down, it would be really hard to protect it from falling debris and machinery. Another view of how it's sandwiched between the fence and the building. The Magnolias, again, they're in a verge or a green strip there. They're kind of funky, some of them bent, curved, different heights, but they have to pop those out. And then the landscape plan, as you saw, introduces new if these don't survive the transplant. Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 15 caliber inches. That's be 5 inches per tree. That would be 5 for the southern Magnolia, 5 for each of the hollies, and provide a landscape plan indicating the locations of the relocated palm trees and mitigation summary for review and approval. With that said, we need to have Mr. Chris Cook unmuted, and Gary Jensen, Mark Brandenburg, I believe, is part of their team. Chris, who else is a member of your team?
I'm not sure if Frank Smith was able to participate.
Frank Smith, yes, sir. Frank Smith.
Just to be available to answer any questions if they come up.
Okay. So I think you have 4 of your members unmuted and ready to roll.
Okay, this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you all in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Excellent. Thank you all for that. And Chris, the floor will be yours to start your presentation.
Okay, thank you. And again, just in consideration of everybody's time, I'll try to be as brief as I can, and then, of course, be available to answer any questions. As Eric mentioned, the improvement to Capers Hall is something that is desperately needed on the Citadel campus. The building, actually, that building was originally constructed in the 50s, and then an addition was done later in the 70s. But the classroom spaces, the study spaces were all built at that era to not really provide the educational needs and opportunities that are required on a college campus today. So this project really is all about providing spaces to that are more appropriate for the current methods that teachers are using. It's also classroom, it's not just classroom spaces, it's also offices for faculty. So it is something that is very necessary that happen. As Eric mentioned, it's already gotten BAR approval for the demolition. And you'll notice that one of the things that is key to the project too is that the parking, there was a fairly large parking lot to the south side of the existing Capers Hall. The new footprint is going to eliminate a lot of that, but also at the very south end towards Hugie Street, there's going to be a very nice plaza space, very nice. It's all with pavers and landscaping to give a much better front door appearance to this part of the campus, because it is on the edge of the campus right near the front gate. So the footprint of the building, that's a little deceiving in the plan that you're looking at, but in the center of that plan and in the bottom right there in the middle, that's actually a courtyard space that is open to the sky above. So that is not all building structure. There is a courtyard that's on the west side of that building. The necessary, service access to the back of the building is necessary not only for the small auditorium that is there, but also just for campus deliveries and campus collection of trash and that sort of thing that all happens interior to the campus. The Elmwood Avenue, which is at the top of this plan that you're looking at, and then Hugie to the right of the plan or to the south, there will be screen walls and fencing that are all very typical to what the campus currently has. So it's something that's very common in what people would be used to seeing at the Citadel campus. But it's going to be done in a way, as I mentioned, without the parking there, that really presents a very nice, not only building elevation, but just a lot better experience all around. The parking, the only parking that is included in that area at the south end are ADA spaces to give them close proximity to the building when there are visitors that need to be able to do that. As far as the trees, you can see there's quite a bit of effort in the landscaping. There are I think there are probably about a total of 10 to 12 larger canopy shade trees that are incorporated into the landscape plan. And then there are also, Eric mentioned the palm trees, whether they can be relocated or new, but there are actually, as you can see in this plan, quite a few palm trees that again that fit with the overall appearance in that part of the campus. As far as the hardship, it is a very difficult site to work with in terms of the program for what the college has. And I think it can also be said that the Hollies in particular, they're at a location out in the middle of the site that's nearly impossible for us to be able to expand. And the Magnolia, as Eric mentioned, on the north side of the building is very close to the building and would be very difficult for us to be able to really even do that demolition without significantly damaging that tree. So with that, I will just leave it for any questions or clarifications that the board may have for us.
Okay, thank you. Eric, is there anybody registered to speak in favor or opposed to the application?
Mr. Chairman, nobody registered to speak in favor or oppose the project.
Okay, excuse me. Then we'll close this application to the public. It'll be opened back to the committee for questions or discussion. And I'll start again and say that I personally don't see an issue with the application. I like the idea of the amphitheater and that space in the middle separating the two wings of the heated space. I think it'll be a nice improvement in that area. I will say when I first saw that amphitheater and thought of it being a large auditorium, it gave me some nightmarish flashbacks to some horrible architecture theory classes at Clemson back in the late 80s, but I think I'm over that now. So I'll open it up to the rest of the board if you have any questions.
Well, I don't see being able to do okay. I don't see being able to do the demolition without these trees. So I think it just makes sense. Is the plaza area going to be open to the public? It looks like it is.
Well, interestingly, Amanda, I want to clarify one thing too, to make it real clear. So that is an auditorium space at the top part of that center part of the building. That's not an amphitheater. It is an interior auditorium, but below that, in the middle, that is the courtyard space. But to answer your question specifically, Amanda, actually, people don't realize, and it's something that this new Citadel leadership is working on. It's an open campus, so people are actually able to walk onto campus at any time. There's a gate there, but they're really there to answer questions and to help people as much as anything. But that space could be available for people to come walking onto campus. And that courtyard area itself is not inside of any doors that would be locked or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Eric, the only thing that I would say, I mean, I agree with your assessment and so forth. The only thing that concerns me is we always talk about native trees, and the one thing that people could slip in there is red maple is technically considered a native canopy tree.
Right.
I think we have to be careful with that. I mean, I know we can't dictate, but yeah.
Right. Well, we kind of extend our powers during TRC, and there's locations where we will consider red maple when it's in a very open space with a lot of green around it. But in this urban environment, we would discourage that if it showed up on a plant schedule.
I got you. Well, with that being said, then I would make a motion that we approve the staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Did we lose Joel?
I think Joel's on mute.
Dadgummit. Sorry about that, y'all. We have a motion by Andrew, seconded by Paula, and I'll go through the roll. Ms. Barton,
I in favor.
Ms. Murphy,
I in favor.
Target,
I in favor.
Yuji,
I in favor.
Ms. Ravenel,
I in favor.
and Mr. Adrian is also I in favor, so that is approved 6-0, unanimous. Thank you for your application and presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Scott, if you could bring back Jeff Webb now.
Mr. Webb, are you present again? Nope. Do you want me to hold off until we find Mr. Webb?
Yeah, let's see if he covers up that blue tip crab there.
Hang on here.
There he is.
Oh, all right. So our next item agenda, welcome back, Jeff, is item B1. It's 2040 Maybank Highway, application number 210106B1, TMS number 34304000028. Request a variance from section 54.347 to allow a reduced landscape buffer zoned GB.
Okay. This is the application submitted. A letter describing their hardship. Very unusually shaped property, located off of Maybank Highway, north side. It reads as part of the Riverland Terrace Shopping Center, the Terrace Shopping Center, I guess it goes by. Zone GB. Bound by North Javert. Take note that 130 North Javert, I would assume, is the address. The owner of that resident also owns this property. Mr. Eddie Buck, very successful businessman, has a lot of endeavors going on in the city, and owns this property and lives behind it. Home to the Plaza Laundromat, surface parking lot, gravel. And then you see his driveway there, kind of in a square rectangular fashion as you approach his home. And you just barely see a line behind the laundromat, there's an existing fence line there, and there was a lot of shrubbery growing in between the laundromat and that fence, kind of left unattended, a lot of vines and shrubs. He proposes to build an addition to the laundromat, which would be a retail use, but then also build a, for lack of a, well, it's proposed as a garage. And he would have access off of his private property through the buffer to the back of the garage to house whatever is needed to be in that garage. And then, of course, he wants to expand the retail opportunities on the south side of the project next to the laundromat. Reorganize the parking lot, add in parking lot islands, plant landscape, provide a 10-foot buffer. The ordinance would only require a 5-foot landscape strip between vehicle use area and the abutting right-of-way line. But he's proposing a 10-foot buffer along North Gervette. So he's providing, the requirement is when you have commercially zoned property adjacent to DR, in this case, diverse residential, you have a 25-foot landscape buffer. So this exhibit shows the buffer line, and he'd like to reduce that by 15 and provide just a 10-foot. And then as you see to the east, there's another residential property. He'll provide the full 25-foot buffer adjacent to that neighbor. Obviously, the garage is sized for whatever is going to be housed in there, and then the retail component out front. This is the back side. You can see the chain link fence in the back of the laundromat and the landscaping on his side of the fence property line, which I think was done by Wertimer and Klein. Palm trees, some ligustrum in there, thick hedge screening the back of the property, probably before obviously his purchase and what have you. This is looking west. And then another view. So because of the unique situation where we don't have a neighbor that would oppose this, staff is prepared to recommend approval. We are going to ask that he install a 6-foot minimum wooden fence along the common property line. You never know what the future holds. But to allow the access gate through that and provide the detail would have to be approved by DRB. Must plant evergreen trees and shrubs in the provided 10-foot landscape buffer. Landscape plan again to be approved by both TRC and DRB. And as shown on the exhibit, provide that 10-foot wide landscape strip along North Javert and landscape that as well. So with that said, Giles Branch, Mr. Eddie Buck, and Mr. Frederick Whittle, I believe, need to be unmuted.
Right.
Good afternoon, Giles. Do you want to kick it off or Fred?
Oh, some feedback. Is everybody unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to swear you all in, and then the floor will be back to you. Do y'all swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, the rest of the team has to. Eric, I haven't heard everybody.
This is Eddie Buck. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Buck, I don't know if I need to swear him in individually, but I only heard one I do. And there's 3 people that want to talk.
I tried to unmute. This is Fred Whittle. I do as well. I did say that.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Giles, are you unmuted? Can you hear us, Giles? Well, he must be having some technical difficulties.
Maybe that was the feedback that I was hearing on the line. But Mr. Buck, Mr. Whittle, if y'all want to start the presentation, please just state your full name, your address.
Here now.
For the record. Okay.
Okay.
And Giles,
Um,
sorry, now that Giles is on the phone, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much. All right, back to you, Mr. Buck.
Eddie Buck, 130 North Gevert Drive, Charleston, 29412. The purpose of this development is to add some retail to the shopping center, to be able to maintain the existing laundromat and keep them in place, but not to necessarily maximize the retail square footage, and to use the back component of the proposed building as a garage for my personal use, would then give me a full, I guess, buffer, or the residential a buffer between the commercial activity in Maybank Highway. The purpose of a 25-foot buffer between commercial and residential is to protect the resident. In this case, I am the resident, and I have more than a 25-foot landscape buffer on my side of the premises. In the past, it's been kind of an ungrown area that lies behind the laundromat, and there's been a lot of unwanted activity that's gone on there over the years. So this way it would be basically some real protection from the residential, add some limited retail space. So it would be a real benefit to me, and would like to reduce the buffer to make this possible. That, my wife did not want to add the garage to our yard and take out landscaping there. So this was kind of a way to make this an extension of our yard. There's currently heavy plantings, as you can see on the screen, the existing driveway. There's grass and trees, and then you get into a bed that includes hedge, palm trees, I think some Leland cypresses, some other things in there as well. So I want to leave that kind of undisturbed, and then reduce the buffer to 10 feet. I'm not really in favor of adding a 6-foot wood fence to separate the properties, as I'm kind of making it an extension of my front yard. And I think that makes it look a little more commercialized, but are willing to work with staff on how do we delineate between the properties. To the, I guess, the east, we're maintaining a 25-foot buffer against my neighbor and the residential. There's currently access off of North Gevert to access behind the laundromat. All that's currently inside a chain link fence. Certainly plan to keep access to the back of the laundromat and access into the garage as well from that side. So happy to answer any questions about it. There is a sewer easement that also runs between the properties as well.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else on the team that would like to be heard or have anything to add?
I just wanted to point out, this is Giles Branch with Earth Source Engineering, 962 Houston Northcutt.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out the Eric clearly explained that there are some extraordinary and exceptional conditions with the shape of this piece and the way that the back of the property projects into the residential portion of the area, which is what's creating the hardship of the buffer into Mr. Buck's yard. That really kind of covers one of the 4 criteria, really the 2 criteria, because the second condition is that it doesn't generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. You can see how this property goes much further back into the residential portion of that area. And so we're infill developing here, and that just creates a hardship. And And that just isn't something that applies to the rest of to the terrace, for example, which is shaped differently. Really because of the situation also with the property behind it being the same ownership, also changes things in the fact that these two, for it to be effective, he has to have the access through what would be an impenetrable buffer. And also the point of the buffer completely goes away in this situation. So if we don't remove the buffer, it will effectively restrict the development in this fashion. So authorization of this variance definitely has a substantial detriment to the development, but not to the property owner. So it won't have an effect on the neighbor adjacent. You can see we are keeping the buffer to the one neighbor that is adjacent as well. The parcel you'll see to Plan North, the Ron Severs property, we're maintaining that buffer. And I just wanted to be clear that the proposed green space that we would be leaving would not be a landscape green space. As Eddie mentioned, the landscaping, any screening that's necessary at all, is already on the residential property, because this back area, there is no landscaping in this buffer, this required buffer. It's an open lawn now. And the reason being is that there's also a sewer easement that he mentioned is running through that area. So there is really no way to plant that with the sewer company needing to get in and maintain that sewer line. So that's why it's cleared now, and that's why it would need to remain an open green space for the sewer.
All right, well, thank you. Mr. Schultz, is there anybody registered to speak in favor or oppose the application?
Mr. Chairman, nobody registered to speak in favor or oppose the application.
All right, then we'll close this application to the public and it'll be open to the board. I personally don't see an issue with the application. I think that since we have the unique instance of the adjacent residential property owner being the owner, and it's his desire, he should use his property. He's correct. He's got more than the required buffer on his own lot. I do think that we need to keep the fence, whether it's wooden or they come up with a different material design. But I think the 6-foot privacy fence is probably an important piece. Anybody else?
I have a question, and this is probably for Eric or Lee, but since it is a unique situation with the adjacent property owner being the same as the subject property owner, would it be appropriate to add an additional buffer on the residential property? Just, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If that property sells, it'd be nice to have that full buffer. I don't know if that's even a possibility. Just a thought, maybe in lieu of the fence.
So the way the buffer schedule reads, single family, even though it's zone BR, again, we don't know what the future could hold there. It's a very large lot, but obviously there's a very beautiful home there. And with the proposed improvements, I think it will always remain a single family house. But single family against commercial, there is no required buffer required. So I don't think we can impose or suggest that.
Right.
Okay. I agree with most of what you said, Joel. And I mean, I'm sort of in agreement with Mr. Buck here on this one that, the privacy fence, I don't really see the need for it to be required on that, other than, I mean, if he sells his property, the people know what they're getting. There's no, and it's his property and it's against his property. My problem with this particular application is Ronald, what is it, Severs? Is that his name? The neighboring property owner?
Yes.
Do we have anything from him that says, sure, no problem? Because in my mind, his property goes back, right? If you look at the color coded one, his property keeps going back. So if his house sits back there and somewhere on 478 somewhere, he's looking at that corner, right? Is he not?
Yeah, but they're maintaining that 25-foot required
Yeah,
buffer.
but not from that viewpoint. They've narrowed it down to 10, correct?
No.
No, I think if you look at his exhibit here,
yep.
that 25-foot view buffer extends past that
Isn't
corner of
that
that
dashed
building.
line the continuing of the property line going back? So really there's, I don't know, 15 feet, 20 feet of his property that is technically only a 10-foot wide buffer. Is it not?
No, if I'm reading it correct, his dash line starts in the upper left corner there. It goes towards that light green hatched area, and then it jogs north of the page, so straight up, and then it cuts over to the right, and then back down at a strange angle. So I think
So his property line
good.
is at the edge of that 25-foot buffer, and it goes all straight back.
Then it looks like it goes up towards
Correct.
where his name is on the page there.
That's
So
what
I will say, Mr. Branch, do you want to clarify
Yeah,
that?
you're right. The way you've got it, it's he's covered. We left the buffer as is compliant on his side. And if you go to, it might be appropriate to look at maybe one of the aerials. You can see there's also a very heavy vegetation buffer between. Is that, yeah? You can see the number of trees and green space that's already there along that, basically that 25-foot buffer. Even though it's not required between the two residential lots, it continues. So we're not asking for a variance on his side at all. We didn't think that would be appropriate.
So, because he's coming off of Coger, right? The neighbor.
I believe he comes
That's
off
correct.
access somewhere else. He
No,
comes from the other
his
direction.
access comes off Coger around the back.
Yeah.
And there's a heavy tree line in that, I guess on my property, in that corner that abuts his property, and there's a bunch of trees on his side as well. Or I should say on hers. Unfortunately, he passed in the last few months. So
Have you talked to them about this?
I have not.
And so based on where she lives, she wouldn't have seen and the way she accesses her house, she wouldn't have necessarily seen the notice. But this is one story, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, one story.
And if you're not going to really be able to, she won't even be able to see it. But if you go to the pictures that Eric put up there, you can see. There you go. That's my basically my maintenance shed. So you can't even see the neighbor, and the building would sit inside here. And you can see there's a couple of trees that are on this property that will fall in the buffer. So the fence line you see there, it doesn't represent anything. I put that up at one time too. There was so much unwanted activity going on in this back corner that gave basically another separation between my residential property and this kind of parking area.
Okay. I mean, I believe that the buffer is maintained appropriately on that residential property personally.
Can somebody show me, like I'm 6, where this property line is? Because I don't get it. When I look at this map, now go back to that one, not that one.
Well, look at this one, Andrew. Look at this one. See the blue?
Yeah.
See how that neighbor's property line jogs like in and out along that western property line?
Yeah, it looks like it cuts back, and I thought that's where part of that 10-foot buffer extends north. Like if you keep going up the page, it seems like he's got, like, I don't know, 15 or so feet along that 10-foot buffer. Granted, it's in the 25-foot buffer, but that's not, you see what I'm saying? I mean, if he's to the left, if he's to the left and he's looking at this, now he's only got a 10-foot buffer. Now, if he's above, or she, and is looking back down, of course he's got the 25-foot buffer. But it looks like it's 10-foot wide when you're looking at it from what is paper left. Or is that
basically you're saying if he's looking across? So he's at the top, because it is throwing us off because we're looking at two different orientations. When we look at my plan, your landscape view versus that other plan sheet. So that is so he's at the top of this. You can see his name, and that's his lot. His line's running left, which is running towards the Wapoo. So the only way he would see the building is if he's looking through Eddie's lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the dash line coming off of where it says 20-foot setback to the left of this represents the property line that separates Mr. Buck from the
Correct.
adjacent
That's
neighbor.
it.
And I see your
That's
point,
exactly
Andrew.
it.
If you went from the on this drawing, even from the back left corner of that building on a diagonal to the corner of where the property line is, it doesn't look like it's 25 feet.
It would be 10
But,
feet wide, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I think that I think they've taken those property lines and they've said so if you offset that the property line that runs vertical, right where it says 25-foot minimum or 25-foot existing buffer, if you offset that 25 feet, it just runs parallel with the building. If you take the other property line, they have it offset at 25 feet, it stops shy of that addition. So I think it's an odd orientation, but I believe that the intent of maintaining that 25-foot buffer is there.
Correct. If Eddie's property was zoned commercial and you didn't have a buffer and you just had Ron Seaver, that's how you would draw the buffer.
Because if you took that, Andrew, if you took that dash line, the large dash line running left on the page that separates Mr. Buck from his neighbor, if you offset that line 25 feet, it goes into Mr. Buck's property. But those are the dual DR1F or whatever properties. So there's no required setback there. It's not until you get to where that line goes vertical that you have to take those setbacks, and you gotta offset it 25 feet. So I think they got it drawn right.
Also, Eric, if you go back to, I guess, the overlay of the zoning overlay, that the property line's not correct there. Where that notch out into my lot of yellow is, that property line runs all the way straight. So there's not a notch out.
I see.
Up top, but the corner we're looking at, I think, is where the dash blue line comes in, and then another we're at where the notch kind of as the close part of the notch to the commercial zone property. That's the line we're looking at. So I think they've done it correctly.
So you said,
Go ahead,
so
Ed.
Eddie, you said that and I should know this because I live in Riverland Terrace. But is there this, I know the curb cut into the main part of the shopping center, but that other curb cut exists now, or is that new? The
It does.
lower one?
It does. It's all gated now, but it does exist now. It's because I've got to allow access for the sewer. There's a sewer line that runs through there. So there's a gate and there's access now. And actually that point, and I guess my entrance down the street, are really the main access points. The quadruplex also accesses onto North Everett, but directly across, the neighbor there, he enters his property. I think that's what, Frampton, not off of North Everett. I mean, that's a unimproved dirt road.
Yeah.
And some city research, it's labeled as a community road, so we're not even sure who really maintains it.
Nobody does.
Nobody does.
Yeah. There's several of those over there.
Yeah.
They're like farm to market roads and community roads. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we move to approve of staff recommendations.
All right. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right. That was Kelvin, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion for approval with the staff recommendations. I'll go through the roll. Ms. Barton,
I in favor.
Ms. Murphy,
I in favor.
Mr. Webb,
I in favor.
Mr. Hargett,
I'm gonna abstain because I still don't get it.
all right. Mr. Yuji,
I in favor.
Ravenel,
I in favor.
and Chairman Adrian is I in favor also. So it's going to be 6-0 with 1 abstention. So the motion is approved. Thank you for your time and application.
Thank you for your time tonight.
I have a quick question.
Thank
Are
you.
you going to be planting trees in those what look like islands in the parking lot?
Yes, the
Yes,
TRC
the
requires
plan
that.
is to improve the
Great.
parking lot as well.
Great.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So
Have a
then
good
our next 2 items, B2 and B3, were both deferred, which will bring us to the last item on our agenda, item B4, which is 79 Cooper Street. Application number 210106B4, the TMS number 459-0504-124. Requests a special exception from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree zoned DR2F.
Before we get started, Scott, I think Michael Kiefer would be that last remaining number. He was going to call in. He's with the city. All right, so city project, 79 Cooper at the corner of Hanover and Cooper, zone DR2F, a vacant lot. So the City of Charleston Department of Housing and Community Development is proposing to build an affordable unit here. Bartlett looked at this red mulberry. It's not a good red mulberry. As you can see, it sits on the southeast corner on the Hanover Street side. You can see there, it's a multi-stem volunteer tree. Julia Martin is designing the single family house, pushing it into the corner. Obviously it will meet our vision clearance triangle requirements, but then the drive would be further from the intersection to the west with a side yard. These are the photos submitted by the city. Michael Kiefer, not the best image, but I have better. So there you see it. It's a red mulberry. Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 8 caliber inches. I did round up from 7.5. When you take the total inches, this is a category 4 tree. So it's 1/4 of the DBH inches removed. Native canopy trees, provide landscape plan for staff review and approval.
All right. Who all?
Michael, can you hear us? Mr. Kiefer, can you hear us? I assume he said he was going to call in, so I assume that's him. I don't recognize the number.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Is Mr. Kiefer?
Yes.
Okay, this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you in, and then the floor will be yours. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. If you'd state your full name and your address for the record, and then you may proceed.
Michael Kiefer, 105 Rooster Ridge Road, Somerville, South Carolina, 29486.
Thank you.
You have anything to add, Michael?
No, as you stated, Eric, it's a tree in bad condition, and we're positioning that house where we are because we're trying to take advantage of that curb cut on Cooper Street to provide off-street parking. And so where the house placement is, where we want it on the lot, the tree is sort of getting in the way, and when we excavate for our footings, we'd probably be damaging the roots. Hello?
Okay.
That's good.
Hello?
Thank you. Yep. We
right.
hear you.
Well, Mr. Schultz, is anybody registered in favor or against the application that wanted to speak?
Mr. Chairman, nobody registered to speak in favor or oppose the application.
Okay, then we're going to close this to the public. It'll be open to the board for discussion. And I'll just start and say it's not a very good looking tree. So I don't have any issues with the application.
I would agree with that. And it's so close to the sidewalk and there's a utility box there. Not sure what it is, but the roots could potentially grow into that. It has terrible form.
Yes. Any other? Go
I
ahead.
agree. The tree is probably beautiful on the inside, Joel, but I'll make a motion to move for approval with staff recommendations.
All right, so there's a motion for approval with staff conditions. Is there any other discussion from the board before we second? If not, is there a second on this motion?
I'll second it.
All right, so motion for approval by Paul, seconded by Jeff. I'll go through the roll. Ms. Barton,
I in favor.
Ms. Murphy,
I in favor.
Mr. Webb,
I in favor.
Target,
I in favor.
Mr. Yuji,
I in favor.
Ms. Ravenel,
I in favor.
and Mr. Adrian is also I in favor, so that's unanimous 7-0 approval. And we thank you for your time and application.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. And thank
Thank
you,
you.
board.
So Eric, will you be involved in looking at the selection of plant material they're putting back in?
I'll put a flag on the single family house review that comes through and have our staff, they'll have to demonstrate whether they're going to plant the 8 inches on site or get a couple trees on site and then make up the residual through the city street tree program.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll put a flag on it so our staff comes to me and we'll look at it.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you. Thank you,
yes.
Kelvin. Thank you, Ruthie. You made it through the first meeting.
This was an easy one.
That was an easy one.
Yeah.
We'll possibly deal with the 2 that would defer next month, and then I received 2 additional applications, so maybe a total of 4 next month.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Eric, thank you as always. Lee, thank you as always. And everybody else, I hope you have a wonderful evening in 2021. Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good to see everybody.
Bye,
Happy
y'all.
New Year. Bye.
Have a
Bye
good day.
now.
Have a good night.